What's going on, guys? So in this video, I'm going to be going over AMD and kind of giving it a completely different approach to what I've been going over in the past few videos. Any of you that have been following my channel, I was talking about how AMD, I sold out of it back at $25 a share, and then it continued to run up. And, around $30, $32 a share, I kind of made a video explaining why I thought it was kind of overpriced and why I thought too much of its future growth was, embedded into its stock price, and how I just didn't think it was going to be able to actually gain the market share that the market was pricing into the stock. And, since then, the stock's been down, from its high. It's been down. It was at one point down about 30%, and now it's sitting around about down about 20%. So it's pretty much around where I sold. But now I'm looking at Intel, and, I assumed Intel was going to get their shit together. So Intel, had months of, just bad publicity. They were fumbling on all cylinders. Like they had security issues. Then they had to push. Then they tried really hard to pump out an amazing CPU, and it just failed. So then they had to push everything back, and it allowed AMD to gain a massive amount of market share. And so I assumed that Intel was going to, understand that, okay, we need to take the more, slow and steady approach to solving this issue. And, we'll gain back the market share we lost from AMD as we normally do. And so, unfortunately, this one allowed, for Intel, unfortunately, great for AMD, it allowed AMD to really capitalize on market share. So if you look at this chart, with PC sales of the past couple of months, with just last month, the AMD market share for new CPUs sold was, close to 80%, and that's pretty impressive. When you're looking at, say, Intel's normally been, the top of the top as far as CPUs go until this past year, and now it seems every new person that's going into, gaming, PC and going the PC enthusiast route, building a gaming rig, whatever they're doing, it seems to all be focused around building new Ryzen-based computers. So that does not bode well for Intel, in the future. But what's really important is now what Intel seems to have done in the past week. The markets were just selling off this past week, so everybody was kind of freaking out about, interest rates and, the Dow dropping, 800 something points. And so I don't think a lot of people looked into, say, what was going on with Intel, because Intel seems to, be relatively flat compared to the rest of the semiconductor space. But Intel had released benchmarks about their new 9900K CPU, which is their new i9, which is, their top of the line for gamers and, workstations and PC enthusiasts. Pretty much their top PCU going away from server-based CPUs. And they contracted a third-party company, and it was called Principal Technologies. And, they released benchmarks of how this new CPU compared to the 2700X from, AMD's top Ryzen CPU. And it was complete bogus. So if you looked around the internet for any, gaming influencers, tech influencers, or, just any tech forum, everybody seems to be calling out Intel's extremely inflated numbers. So the testing pretty much worked, and if you go to this channel, Gamers Nexus, he goes in depth and actually goes up to the company and talks about how bogus these results were, and they had them retested, and they had more realistic numbers. I'll link this channel down in the description below if you want to go more in depth with it. But essentially what happened is that the first round of benchmarks showed Intel's new CPU destroying AMD across all boards by 40+% efficiency, and Intel was getting numbers that no one had ever expected to see, especially not, with just a rebranded of the same architecture. And people saw, results that were actually lower than what people have already tested on Ryzen. So something was up. And then, so they kind of called out Principal Technologies, was saying that these numbers are completely bogus. What's going on? And it's because Principal Technologies did all these synthetic benchmarking in a very favorable environment to Intel. So it was their gamer mode or something like that. And, Intel is structured to perform better in games, mainly because of all the contracts that Intel has had for years with game developers. And, it just seems to be the standard. That's been the way it's been for years. But AMD in recent years has been getting better, but Intel is just generally hardwired more to perform better in games. That being said, it wasn't about that. That's maybe like a 5% or so difference, not a 40% difference. And so they had Principal Technologies redo all of their benchmarks. And what realistically, in this new study, their benchmarks they got were, ballpark about 10% better than the Ryzen line. And, that's still great. It's still, if you want best of the best, you can go with Intel. But one, this is just really bad publicity again for Intel, and I think Intel, this was kind of shocked to the PC community because Intel has always been known as the very reserved software company. Like if you look at AMD and NVIDIA over the past few years, they've always hyped up their performance in their benchmarks prior to release, and then you get maybe plus you get like 15% less of what they said because it needs a perfect environment to do whatever they want it to do. But Intel is normally like, okay, these are our benchmarks, it's what you get, and then that was correct, within a few percentage points. But this has completely shocked everybody because Intel seems to really be freaking out about AMD, taking market share away from them and, starting to inflate their numbers and hope that no one figured it out. Fortunately, that plan backfired and everybody found out and everybody's calling out Intel for it. So essentially what this means is now you have the new i9 coming out that only offers about 10%, performance, benefit. Only offers about 10% of a performance boost over the latest Ryzen, which you can currently get on Amazon for $300, and the new i9 costs about $600. So you are pretty much doubling your investment, say when you buy a new CPU, for only 10% of a performance increase. I don't know about you, but the majority of gamers that I know and the majority of PC enthusiasts I know are probably still just going to buy Ryzen. And so the only real window of opportunity here for Intel is enterprises or companies that have, such a large budget. They don't care about, doubling their costs because they need that, 10%. Which would be great, say, if this was a server CPU, but this is a desktop, focused on gaming and focused on workstation CPU. And the majority of their sales are probably for smaller companies or individual users. So this actually, being someone who is relatively bullish on, well, I'm bullish on both of the companies, but I thought Intel was, going to really pick up the slack here. This could pose a lot of issues for Intel in the coming years, in the coming quarters. And Intel was already going to probably be lagging behind AMD in the next couple of quarters anyways until they come up with their new architecture for their CPU. So this just does not bode well for Intel in the short term. But anyways, looking back, so based off of that, Intel is probably going to be really struggling again, recently. And I honestly do not see their numbers being that great in the next quarter once the CPU comes out. I believe it's going to, sell pretty well, probably sell out initially, but its staying power as far as sales probably won't do that well. Normally, every time either AMD or Intel pop out a CPU, it gets sold out instantly. So there's going to be articles about that in the coming weeks, about like, oh, Intel destroyed sales. But honestly, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But it does lead to a very intriguing opportunity with AMD, because now AMD is in a position where if Intel fumbles yet again, and AMD is able to take, another 50% revenue increase quarter over quarter like it did, or say, take another, 5-10% of the desktop CPU space prior to Intel being able to get their act together, because now there is not that big of a, competition until they come up with their new architecture, which won't be for a year. AMD has the ability to capitalize yet again like it did last year when it released Ryzen 1. So, so coming back to the chart, AMD, when I said when I made the video saying it was overpriced and it retraced, down to about here, I assumed it was going to kind of float around its previous, support line, and it kind of is right now. It's really resting right on that 50-day moving average, and so we're going to have to see what exactly happens from here. I believe that if AMD is able to kind of mull around these numbers, and either good news comes out, or if the whole Intel, benchmarking issue really surfaces, And a lot of people go into that once they get, like they stop being super distracted from the Dow going down and just the overall market's dipping. I definitely think Intel is going to be in bad light. And a lot of people are probably going to be coming back to AMD. So what that kind of offers, as far as trading goes, not necessarily long-term investing, but as far as trading goes, it offers an opportunity. If AMD is able to regain its momentum, the MACD is pretty much leveling off. If AMD goes back up to its previous, resistance point, that offers about a 20% return. And then if it goes up to what certain analysts are expecting for the company to go up to, you're looking at, if they hit that actual $40 per share number, that'll hit them right about a 50% return right now. Pretty good returns. And so this is really going to matter on how AMD handles this publicity issue, because now Intel's kind of in AMD's hands again, because Intel blatantly, misinformed what Ryzen's benchmarks were going to be against it, and then was caught. So depending on how AMD uses this for PR, AMD is probably going to be able to capitalize on a lot more market share in the short term between new people wanting to buy, processors. I know for me, for example, if I was upgrading my computer right now, based off of just that and the benchmarks that Intel came out with, I'd probably go with a 2700X. And that's mainly because, the Ryzen series has been out for long enough, so that way, all the BIOS and everything, it would be most efficient right now, and eventually that'll all get worked out with Intel's. But, I'm just not, as a consumer, I'm not a big fan of Intel right now, and it's very difficult for me to say that because I've been a pro Intel, like I've run an Intel machine for the past, 7 years now, from what PCs have built. And so it's really difficult for me to see Intel doing this. And also from a stock point, Intel is reasonably priced right now. Like, it's not at a sheer bargain, but it's definitely at a, undervalued point. It's closer to an undervalued point than, say, AMD is, but they're just not getting any better as far as PR goes and as far as probably their sales. So it's going to be very interesting to see, what exactly happens in the next few weeks. And I definitely think that if this news continues to blow up and, game influencers are still, as upset with Intel as they are right now, these people do move a lot of inventory for these companies. That's why they get paid the sponsorships that they do from these companies to do reviews on their stuff. If all of these, influencers are going against Intel right now, and all of them are kind of shocked and upset with Intel, that could really hurt their margins. Obviously, companies and whatnot that have contracts with Intel are still going to be buying Intel chips, but this doesn't look good for Intel. And with that amount of momentum going back into AMD, possibly you could have the stock price move up another erratic movement like it did just recently. It's cooling off right now, so assuming this support, resistance level holds, AMD could just take off, especially with their earnings coming up. And normally, these sales are going to be, Intel sales are going to be projected in the next quarter, but in the past quarter, Intel didn't have a new line out, so this quarter, AMD is probably going to have really good numbers because it was another quarter that Intel really had nothing new on the table, so everybody was going to AMD. So I would be very surprised if AMD did not beat these earnings, and I'll be also very surprised if they do not boost their guidance for next earnings based off of the, kind of interaction that consumers have with the new Intel line whenever it drops. So that's just kind of my update and my 2 cents. Kind of wanted to, approach AMD from the bullish standpoint, and it's actually pretty interesting to see what's going on with the companies right now. I did think that AMD didn't deserve the valuation it's going at, but with Intel continuously messing up, I might have been wrong. Intel might have just actually, cemented AMD taking a larger point of their market share than people expected. So it'll be very interesting to see, normally long shot based, predictions don't really work out, but Intel's really dropping the ball in this one. So I'm interested in what you guys have to say. Drop a comment down in the section below. Like, are you still invested in AMD? Are you going to Intel? Where do you think this is really going to go? Or do you even think that this is important news? Because I honestly think it's pretty important, especially from a consumer of, processors. I would be very upset right now if I was planning on buying the i9 and then I found out all of this, BS in Intel's benchmarks. So I'm a little upset as a consumer. But nevertheless, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you guys like this type of, update with these companies I've been doing? I've been, rather than bringing in new companies, I keep, doing small updates on the companies I've already reviewed. Would you guys rather me get away from that and, focus on brand new companies? Let me know. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.